So I didn't know how to run a scary tabletop role-playing game. And whenever I don't know how to do something in tabletop role-playing games, I just ask the question to my channel, and there's like a lot of people who are really smart who answer questions to the videos I make, and I really appreciate that because I go through and I read those comments and I learn a lot of stuff. So recently I asked the question, how do you make a game scary? Like, how do you make a tabletop role-playing game scary? Because let me try and explain my disbelief of the idea, right? So the first thing I thought was, why would a tabletop role-playing game ever be scary? You know what I mean? Like, we're all sitting here playing a dice game, you know, we're like rolling dice and pretending that something could hurt us or jump out, right? Like, movies are scary because during the period of time you're watching the movie, there's like soundtrack and, you know, sound effects and actors trying to convince you of things. It's different, right? Like, if you have to be the actor, you know, like, you're not really scared, right? So anyways, I asked the question, how do you successfully do it, right? And the response I got was actually very interesting because it helped to educate me in the fact that there are different tier levels in role-playing games, right? So when you're trying to play a certain system or setting in a role-playing game, there's different like levels of difficulty. And it seems to me that scary games are near the top of like difficulty. Now, you might be someone who successfully runs scary games and you've had no problem with it ever. My perception, being a novice DM, is that successfully running a scary game where you as the DM calculate the amount of scare to put into your players to successfully scare them and not turn them off to the scare, it seems pretty high tier. Now, I would like to I would be interested in hearing your arguments about it being a simple system, because to me it seems like I might need to practice a little bit before I get this good. And I'm going to go through my note cards and explain all the things that it seems a dungeon master has to do to successfully create a scary environment with their players. Okay, so I'm going to go through it. I don't have like a numbered system. It's just I got a bunch of notes and I'm going to go through my notes. And so if you want to learn how to scare your players, one of these things, there's probably a bunch that are going to be helpful for you, but like one of these things might give you that edge in scaring your players properly, right? The thing I get is that the scary game might be just under romance game, you know? And if you let your mind wander a little bit, you can kind of go, oh yeah, I can see how romance could be really difficult to run. You know, like that could go into cringe like so fast, you know? Anyways, so let me get to it, okay? I'm going to come back to this card at the very end, but this card is essentially the crux of running a scary role-playing game, at least the way I understand it, okay? You want to get your players to say the words, do we really want to do that? You know, like you want the table in that mindset, like where one player is going, oh, do we really want to do that? And if you can get that to be said at your table, you've probably achieved your goal, all right? I'm going to put that there so I come back to it, okay? All right, I'm going to go with some mechanics things first. Ambience and lighting, you know, those are probably going to like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Ambience, lighting, obviously music, you know, if you can run music at your table or at your Discord server and it's not going to disrupt your audio or whatever. If you can get music going, music and lighting is going to help. Maybe candles, you know. The system. So the system itself could play into that. And there are certain systems, like actual game systems, for example, Call of Cthulhu or Vaesen. There's others, I just can't remember all their names right now. But a system that is designed for a scary type of interaction is going to have some mechanics in it that are geared towards supporting the setting, right? So in Call of Cthulhu, your players are going to like be playing madness and stuff, right? And so the system itself is helping to depict the scariness of the world, right? Mechanics, you know, you want grave death and permanent loss to be mechanics in the game. Like you need to be playing with the idea of both characters dying and losing stuff, right? So like mechanically, you can see this might not be a game system for all players. Like for you as a DM to get this to work properly, you're going to have to be telling your players, like, your characters might die and I might take all your stuff. You know, like there's a lot of players who are like, don't do that, right? So last mechanical one on this card is the dread system, and I only recently have learned about this, but it's basically like you have a giant Jenga tower with, you know, blocks, and you're pulling the blocks out, and anytime you're like trying to do something difficult in the game, you pull a block out. So right there's a tension mechanic that is added to the game, and if everyone's pulling from the block and the first person who makes the block falls, like their character dies or something, right? So anyways, mechanics can play into it, and these were a few like more out of game mechanics. And I think the grave, death, and permanent loss is something that just has to be in your brain so you can be communicating to your characters before the game starts, like, hey, you're going to lose some stuff, right? When you're narrating the game for your players, it seems to me that there's a few key important things, right? So the environment, right? Environment needs to be described in a way where you're touching on eeriness, right? So there has to be an eerie type of environment. There needs to be uncertainty, helplessness in the players, right? Like, so you need to be establishing that the players are maybe no match for this thing, and maybe they're investigating something, but like there has to be uncertainty, right? And we'll get to some more of the uncertainty in a minute, right? You want to try and make normal things seem scary. You know, like a basketball goes rolling out or something. You know, like you've seen like some of those movies where like a normal thing is like, oh, you know, like kids, you know, like kids are scary and stuff, right? Like, and they're not really scary, but they're scary in like movies, right? As soon as you see a kid in a movie, it's like, no, don't go in there. Helplessness, I mentioned. Okay, so the big thing that people mentioned over and over and over again was you have to build up. You can't just, you know, a big monster comes out. You got to build up to it, right? Like, first they see some traces of a thing. Then they're tracking it. Then, like, there's claw marks. Then, like, you know, a trash can knocks over. Like, you have to build up to it and trickle out the monster. Like, maybe don't even let them know what the monster is that they're chasing, or the thing, or whatever the scary thing that they're interacting with in the game. Maybe don't even let them see it. You kind of want to trickle it out, right? Atmosphere is a big important thing. Like a bunch of people were like, yo, atmosphere. You gotta watch the jokes. Your players are gonna go jokey real fast to kind of break the tension. And you as a DM have to be like, you know, you have to be like Jean-Claude Van Damme. No expression, right? Like, just no expression. And that's hard to do. It's hard to do at your table. So again, there's a lot of these things where I'm like, ooh, this is like upper tier DMing. Like, I love feeding into my players telling jokes, right? I would have a hard time just with that, okay? Once again, loss of control. So loss of control is kind of a mechanical thing. It's kind of a narrative thing. And this is something like, if you're trying to run a scary game, you have to be aware of the fact that you're having to strip some agency from your players. So your players have to go into this thing understanding that they're going to have agency stripped to them, because you're trying to set them up to be vulnerable, right? And you're trying to set them up into situations where they have loss of control. Another point that someone made here that was really good was give players a choice between two bad options, right? Like, you want this bad thing or this bad thing to happen, right? So, hold on, I got another one. But catharsis is a big important thing, right? We have all these things building up, but then you have to have like this, like this kind of moment of calm, right? Where it brings everything down, otherwise it gets too intense. So as I was going through all these suggestions, I'm like, this is upper echelon tabletop role-playing games. For like a new DM, this would be hard to understand all these things. And it gets deeper than what I've got so far, right? So you have to be giving direction, but it has to be like dangerous direction. That one, like I still can't even conceptualize that properly, but that is something people suggested, right? Players' choices between two bad outcomes. Okay, so this is where it gets even more like, you have to be a DM who's sensing things in the room. You need to know your audience. So you've got to know your audience, and that means you have to know, like, okay, what scares them? What are you allowed to use to scare them? Because like, you could easily play into something that's like, you know, an emotional trigger, or something maybe too dark, or, you know, a goriness, or something, you know, something over the top, and that player just checks out. And once you have like one player check out, you probably have a player responding to the checked out player, you know, like, or noticing it. So this is a thing where, like, you as the GM, you have to be putting out feelers, and you have to be reading the room constantly and going, too far, too gory, not gory enough, or you have to know how much you can press in on a certain thing before you send them over. So like, this is difficult, and it's possible it's not even for every table, like, because you know, there's a lot of people who are like, don't trigger me, right? Like people say things like that. They don't want to be triggered. And this is a type of tabletop RPG that is kind of trying to trigger people. So there might be an audience of people that you can't play this type of game with, okay? That's just at least what I'm understanding. Again, haven't played it. It's just what I'm understanding, okay? Know your audience, know your system. If you're playing in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, it might be very difficult to make a scary moment because your players can do so many crazy, awesome things. And, you know, like, it's hard to set up a scare when you've got characters who can just, you know, one-shot some monsters, right? Anyway, so know your system, know your players. Again, you're playing into the loss of control. You're also playing into madness. This is another place where you might be playing with players and they're like, no, I don't want to pretend I'm crazy, you know, because of, like, you know, whatever, traumas or something, my own past life. Like, this is a type of tabletop RPG where you are essentially, like I mentioned, kind of trying to trigger people a little bit, but right at the edge of what is, like, you don't want to be going past uncomfortable. You know, you don't want to be going past a certain point, because once you do, it's like you lost your table. All right. See, characterize loss of control. Okay, yeah, so you have to add a lot of narrative flavor into things. So when someone is losing control of their character in some way, you have to be kind of stepping in to adjudicate the explanation for loss of control. All right. Timers, you know, things that are counting down to stuff, and even mysterious timers. You want to have like a little pie chart, and you're putting pieces in, and your players don't know why you're putting those pieces in. Torches, things with darkness, explaining that your characters can't see anything. Humor contrasts horror and the feeling of safety. So you also want to be playing into humor lightly for those moments of catharsis. So humor does the thing that sets up a good moment of catharsis, all right? Some general ideas, things with cursed objects and mysteries, you know, where you're trying to like solve the mystery of this object or a MacGuffin or something, or what's going on with the people of this place. Like, a mystery sets off a horror story in the right direction. Also transgressions. This was something I think was mentioned once or twice. The idea of the player characters doing things wrong, and like maybe people are trying to punish them for the things they've done. So you actually have like player characters who are, you know, quote unquote guilty in this world. Let's see, inexplicable events, and then setting in tone. And those are all very, very important things in a horror tabletop RPG. Let's see, I have another thing down here. Horror, okay, yeah, so when you're going to do humor and horror, let's see, it's good to understand the difference between humor going into horror and horror going into humor, and how to use those things. Because humor going into horror is going to create stark contrast, and it can be a good stark contrast to get your players going from laughing to, oh, scared, right? Going from horror to humor, harder to do. At least that's what I am being told, okay? Loss of control, madness, torch, timers, scary, got all that one. All right, let me go back to the goal. The goal is to get your players to say, do we really want to go in there? Do we really want to do that? Should we really, you know? Okay, so these are all tips and suggestions that were given to me by people on my channel in the comments. I will be continuing to make these type of videos because they're fun to me. It's fun to learn these type of systems. So I already have one on the books that I still need to get to. That is another one of these. These are like I think I'm calling these like help me make a video or something. Yeah, I think help me make a video. So I have other one that I have to get to, but I think the next one I was thinking of, okay, whatever the next one I was thinking of, I already forgot what it was, but hopefully I wrote it down and then we'll make that, all right? It's late. I'm going to go to bed now. Tomorrow I'm putting together more miniatures and our boat, our ship for Wild Sea. I will finish reading the Wild Sea book, and then I will give a summary of my thoughts on the system. But all right, that's it for today. Just scary games. Yeah, I'm just gonna end it there. God bless you. Have a good night. Talk to you later.